Welcome to the Microcast, the short-form podcast from Microcosm Coaching, where we break down the science, strategy, and psychology behind smarter endurance training. Each week, we tackle a key concept in running, training, or recovery, and we give you practical tools you can apply right away, whether you're building back, leveling up, or chasing down a big goal. We keep it short, evidence-based, and grounded in real coaching experience. No hype, no fluff, just actionable insights to help you train sustainably and perform at your best. Let's get into it.
Over the next few weeks, we're going to introduce you to a few other Microcosm coaches on our podcast, so you can hear a little bit from them on who they are and what they're about.
My name is Kyle Jones, and I became a coach specifically to share my passion and love of running and doing big things. As a master's athlete and a little bit of an older athlete, I have a passion for doing things that I never once thought that I could do. And so I want to be a coach to help others pursue their big dreams and goals and do things they never once thought was possible, even at this later stage in their life. I love to coach specifically master's athletes who have recommitted themselves to achieving their goals, experiencing new endeavors, or undertaking something they never thought was possible with specifically a passion, a focus, and energy. I come with a mindset that it's never too late, and I would love my athletes to have that same vision, that same passion there where they dive in and it's all in, and it's about a lifestyle, not just a hobby. As a coach, I love to help my athletes solve two basic problems that I feel like I can do very, very well. One of those is helping the master's athlete accrue the needed volume and training while staying injury-free through sustainable and durable training programs. Being a master's athlete myself, I really have a focus on helping my athletes get to where they want to go. I also feel like I'm really, really good at helping my athletes solve the problems of ultra running beyond just the training. There's so many other aspects to trail running and ultra running, including shoes and packs and vests and gear and poles and nutrition and hydration and strategy. And I feel like I am really good at simplifying all of that, because all of those small things add up to be a pretty significant factor come race day. It's never too late. And I use the term all in as well. So whatever the dream or goal, I want to share the mindset of it's never too late to be who you are and do the things that you want to do, because I'm super high energy. I bring a high level of stoke to my training process with my athletes. So what I have in common with my athletes is an all-in mentality. I love that training is not a hobby, it's more of a lifestyle for me. My athletes are people that go all in, that put all their energy and focus and stoke and attention into their training so that they can accomplish the things that they want to accomplish and live the life they want to live. I help master's athletes become who they've always wanted to be.
If you want to get to know anyone else on our staff, reach out. We have roster spots available. microcosmcoaching@gmail.com.
All right, we're back. Zoe's chewing her carbohydrates right now, and I'm laughing because I started the 5-second countdown while she still had food in her mouth.
Yep, that was mean. It was so mean.
And you're eating caramel, which is going to take you at least 10 minutes to pick out of your teeth and fully process.
It's just going to be in my teeth for the full episode. That's fine.
My, that was a poor choice.
No, it's exogenous carbohydrates.
Wow. Good reframe.
Thank you.
Positive reframe there.
I'm excited for this episode. We're going to talk about ideas that are overhyped or misunderstood. So things that people overemphasize that I think are dumb or just misunderstood. So I feel like this is right in my bag of like Zoe shit, and I'm feeling really seen by the outline that I made. So
you're feeling
makes sense.
Really good about your outline.
Mm-hmm. I love my outlines.
Good
I
for
live
you.
for outlines. I probably make I make so many outlines for my various jobs.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thug life, outline life.
Outline life.
Yep. Chicago style till I die.
Why don't we get right into these hot or nots? I feel like I personally need to build some energy into this episode. and it would be good to not ramble and to just get right into it.
We should do that. Thanks for everyone who sent hot or nots. A reminder to join our Slack community and send your hot or nots. You can email us. I guess you could mail us. I'm not going to give our home address live on air. Ideally, you'll email us.
Please don't mail us.
microcosmcoaching@gmail.com. Microcosm-coaching.com. That's our website.
Yes.
That's how websites work.
That's how they work.
The carbs haven't quite hit my brain yet.
HTTP
// So thanks for everyone who sent these in, who's been commenting on the YouTube. For a reminder, if you're listening, it's actually extremely helpful, whatever platform you are listening on. Follow us. That way you get notified as soon as new episodes drop, and it helps new people find the show, and it helps you find new episodes of the show. So follow us on Spotify, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube. Do your thing, algorithm.
Yeah, and join the community. Join the Foothills community.
So you can hear more of our hot takes. So first one we have is red light therapy.
Oh my gosh. I'm just going to go right out and say, for me, this is not hot.
Yeah.
And there's a couple reasons why. I don't know if you're going to diverge on my opinion from this, but I think it's first important to say, yeah, the mechanism here is real.
Mm-hmm.
Red light, infrared light does stimulate mitochondrial activity and reduces inflammation. So that's great. And we know this because a 2024 meta-analysis found meaningful DOMS reduction at 24 hours post-workout from red light therapy. And a 2025 follow-up also found that pre-exercise application extended that soreness reduction out 96 hours. So that's a pretty nice benefit there.
Yes. Here's where I'm going to throw some cold water on the infrared fire here.
Why is this cold for me?
All the research is on maximum voluntary contraction. So actual strength out, all the research that has been done on actual strength output shows no significant benefit. So this is not a performance tool. It's an indirect benefit. And consumer devices are not the research grade panels that are used in these studies. Like, you cannot go to Target and buy the device they used in the majority of these in these RCTs. So they have lower power, less tissue penetration, and a meaningfully smaller effect. So particularly looking at one study on plantar fasciitis, which was some of the strongest in terms of pain reduction, improved function, and reduced fascia thickness, the Achilles evidence by comparison is extremely weak. So I would
it's really
say
interesting that it works better for the plantar fasciitis, but not for the Achilles, but they're both tendons.
They're both tendons. I mean, they're different and they have different,
for sure.
But and again, like, that's a pretty noisy information ecosystem is what I would say. And so, like, if you have $400, this is not where I would spend it. Like,
yeah,
if you already have like a professional coach that you talk to for like an hour a week, you are not missing sleep, your diet is dialed, you've got Kylie on speed dial, you're meditating, you're like, I can barely think of anything less important than this.
I know. And I feel like these, again, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here. The things that are overhyped, but probably don't need to be. This is one of those things.
Yeah.
I mean, take that money and actually put it into something that will have more benefits long-term downstream for you. It's just pretty expensive.
So there's cool science, but not enough that I think we need to update praxis or spend money yet. So would love to see more science is kind of where I'm at on that.
All right, let's talk nose breathing, because
I'm exhausted.
Every time we get this question, I'm like, all right.
I feel like we do it once a year, every year.
We have to, though.
It's a classic. Like, this is our free bird.
It is. It is. I'm singing this song at least weekly.
Play nasal breathing.
The reprise on this. You know, I might get to have to answer this question 2 calls in a row.
Oh, really?
In the afternoon sometimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. People want to do nose breathing all the time.
There's always one guy in every run club that's like all about nasal breathing.
So I'll share something personal.
Oh, God.
I was attempting to try nose breathing today on my run because there is a possibility that I have like some kind of vocal cord dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I can tell that there's a difference with my voice right now because I just had several calls in a row and my throat is quite sore. But anyways, my doctor is telling me okay, you might have this vocal cord thing. Try nose breathing. When you run, that can help open up your vocal cords so you can get more air in.
So like helps relax them.
Yeah. And I was like, fuck this. This is so stupid. I am not doing this.
Yeah.
Even for my like 4 out of 10 RPE days, like I will happily find another 20-minute block in my day to meditate, to relax, whatever, my vocal cords.
This is not
I am not
doing
doing
the
that
intervention.
in my runs.
Yeah.
It's not the one for me.
Yeah.
So spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's
hot.
where we're gonna land on this. Spoiler. Yeah, but the claim is that training yourself to breathe through your nose improves CO2 tolerance, boosts nitric oxide, improves oxygen delivery, and just makes you more efficient. So the problem is that at literally any intensity above truly easy, nasal only breathing mechanically limits your airflow. That's why nasal strips are a thing, and I feel like that would almost I would like to see more research there. I'm not as up on like how much.
I think the only reason you put a nasal strip on is so you can breathe more through your nose and your mouth at the same time.
Exactly, to get just like to maximize airflow. So shutting off one of the main holes that air goes through is not what you want.
What we need is a nasal strip that works for your mouth. So you just have a wide open. You're like a fish. You're like a whale in a sea of plankton.
Gosh, this is so gross. Or apologies, but like a face speculum.
What? I don't want to know what that is.
Girls know.
God, that's so bizarre. Okay, I'll look that up later.
Don't Google mouth speculum for the love of God. So. You physically just aren't going to be able to take in enough oxygen, through your nose alone. Any studies showing benefits are pretty much always in sedentary and low activity populations at low intensities. And there's just no compelling evidence that nose-only training translates to better race performance, especially in trained athletes. This is something that I see like a lot of like fitness people and like biohacker TikTok types get into. And like, if there is even a scrap of evidence that something will make you faster, every person in the Tour de France would be doing it.
For sure.
So, I'm not saying everything they do will make you faster. Like, there's some truly wild shit happening in the peloton, but they are certainly not nasal breathing. So that's one heuristic that I think is helpful to look at.
Okay. So here is another great hot or not. Mouth taping during sleep. Can you explain this one to me?
I had to specify during sleep because I was so nervous you would get excited about the idea of me taping my mouth shut. So this is sort of the spiritual soulmate to nasal breathing, but the claim is that if you tape your mouth shut at night, it forces nasal breathing, which will improve sleep quality, nitric oxide production, and recovery. So there's some interesting sleep apnea snoring research. Nasal breathing during sleep does have real benefits for airway mechanics and sleep architecture, but there's not a ton of compelling and consistent evidence that mouth taping is the way to achieve that. So if you have sleep apnea, that's a real problem. Work with a real doctor, not some bullshit you found on TikTok. If you are someone without a breathing dysfunction, which is at least 50% of the hosts on this podcast,
at least,
the evidence that taping your mouth shut meaningfully moves the needle on anything is extremely thin. So, if you have undiagnosed sleep apnea, taping your mouth shut is actually dangerous. Go see a doctor. Get your sleep figured out. That's a huge thing.
Okay, I want to hear from you guys in the comments, wherever you're listening to this, if you have the ability to comment, if you've tried this. I would just be so curious to see, we've got like 1,500 people listening to this podcast at this point. Maybe there's at least one person here who has tried this. So we want to hear from you and tell us your experience. I'm going to go not hot on this, though. Yeah. Just because there's no way I could sleep well with my mouth taped closed.
No, absolutely not.
It'd be so uncomfortable.
My one of my good comedy friends, Ryan, who's also a great athlete and like my stand-up mentor, does this great bit about like how he's into biohacking and he tapes his mouth shut at night, and he is proud of his wife for getting into biohacking and taping her eyes shut at night.
Oh, I know
think
this.
That is so funny.
I know this bit.
I think it's a great bit.
Doesn't lead
Shout out to Ryan.
A lot of intimacy.
Yes. Yeah. So, listener question. I thought this one was fun, and this is not. We're taking a break from the world of science and evidence to go to the land of vibes. So
Yes.
the listener question is, what are things that you see at races that make you think that someone is totally new to trail or ultra running?
Oh, wow. I'm just
Wow,
going to
what
go.
a rich text.
I'm just going to go right out and say it. It's that dude who is running way too hard at the beginning of the race,
Yep.
and you can just tell
Yeah.
because their breathing makes them sound like they're at a
Like their mouth
threshold,
taping.
like they're mouth taping, and they're trying to nasal breathe at the same time. They're clearly running at threshold effort. They're putting it all out there right away, and you can just tell by their breathing, their body language, like they're not going to make it. They're not going to make it to that finish line. Okay, what about Frida?
I've seen a gentleman wearing soccer cleats to a trail race, and I was like, that's a mistake you make exactly one time, most likely. So
that's a good one.
Wearing literally shoes for a different sport, that's going to be a big one, you know? Second only to carrying like a pickleball paddle.
Yes.
That to me screams like, I'm new here, I'm a virgin. When I see people who just like don't bother to collapse their poles, that either tells me they're an American and they're new at trail running, or they're just anyone from Europe.
Do you mean like poles out on
just
the
like
flat?
Yeah, just like holding their poles or trying to like use their poles like way too much.
I love someone who's overly reliant on those poles.
Yeah, being overly reliant on poles, I feel, is pretty new. I feel like super extreme. Like anytime you have headwear that feels like it's doing way too much, like if it's like a super wide brim hat, like the sombrero that has like the flaps, and there'll be like a GoPro mount and like there'll be like a shield built. Like I've seen some truly astounding headgear out on the trails. Sitting down
at aid stations
move. Yep.
is another one that I'm like, okay, you're pretty new.
Pretty new.
The other one that I see at aid stations a lot is eating cheese products.
Yeah, eating
like
cheese,
quesadilla,
dairy.
honestly, like meats, any kind of meats.
Eating food that is good during a race.
Yes, right. Like eating
huge
like
rookie move.
Your
Only go
Denny's
for the
Grand
bad
Slam.
food. Yeah.
You don't want that during the race.
That's correct. No corn dogs.
A lot of folks do unknowingly. They're just not educated. They will gravitate towards those foods.
Yeah,
and then they will probably be throwing up later.
Or like just a huge pack. Like you'll be doing a 50K and there's like someone has a pack where there'll be like a chair and like multiple raincoats and like a mug hanging off it. And I'm like, are we doing separate events? Are you going to be out here for 3 days? What's happening?
Well, you sometimes see that like at the start line of Hard Rock, for example, is you'll see people like they're not even wearing trail running shoes.
No.
They're wearing hiking kits and things like that. And like you can speed hike that course. I have a lot of
I demand that people wear running clothes. Like, let's at least pretend that we're gonna run. My thing.
I swear I saw a dude start that race like in waders.
Like 100%.
You saw that as well?
Like double knee canvas pants, like, which, you know, again, like I'm not on the Hard Rock. Actually, they did invite me to apply for the board. So if I did end up joining the Hard Rock board, my number one piece of input right away would be like, you gotta dress like you're planning on running.
Yes.
Even if you don't, I don't care what you do. As soon as you're out of my line of sight, pretend to run.
At least run down Main Street.
Have some self-respect, have some dignity, and fake it like the rest of us.
It's a running race.
It's a running race.
No, they call it an endurance
It's an
walk.
endurance run.
Endurance walk.
That's why we call it the Walk Hard 100.
All right. Enough ripping on Hard Rock. That is an awesome race.
And again, I feel like all the things that in America make me think it's your first trip, like things that in the United States make you look like a rookie, in Europe mean that you've been doing this every day for your whole life. You know, like in America, wearing the race shirt to the race seems very lame. In Europe, everyone does that. In America, wearing compression gear, lame as hell. In Europe, everyone's wearing compression gear.
I know, like the first time I went to Chamonix, I was like, wow, everybody just wears mountaineering and running clothes all the time. They have no streetwear whatsoever.
No, they don't have it there.
And if I don't the only way to blend in is just to wear
be fully compressed.
I have to be kitted up all the time.
All the way compressed.
Yeah, very compressed. And it's you know,
it's a look.
They respect it.
Yeah, they do.
You know? They respect it. You could walk the streets of Milan head to toe
compression
gear,
multiple buffs like on every like one on the head, one on the neck, several on each arm.
You're not going to get weird looks.
An ankle buff. Yeah, people are just like, that guy knows what's up.
Yeah, that dude's fit.
He's fully compressed. But again, like I see that person in the US, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? I see them in Europe and I'm like, that 60-year-old man is about to kick my ass.
He will smoke you at CCC.
He will smoke me 100%.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a man I am going to lose to. It's upsetting, but I respect it.
All right. I'm not sure what are the other things here that stand out to me as new. I feel like a lot of KT tape. Especially like around the knees.
I feel like there's a bell curve of like newbies use a lot of KT tape and then you get to a certain point in your career where you're like your personality is just barely held together with a ton of KT tape.
Okay. All right.
So call for comments.
Yes.
Let us know what you think we missed, what we are wrong about, like, comment, subscribe. Something. Definitely.
And since we've been putting out this call to the community for more hot or nots, we have gotten so many interesting.
Yeah, it's gotten so much better.
We have a good little cachet of topics to go through for the next couple weeks. So I'm really excited about that. All right, let's talk about what this episode is all about. The 5 things that we think are really overhyped in endurance training.
Yeah, so everything we're going to talk about today is real. There is real science and real research behind it. There are mechanisms that exist. The problem that we're not trying to solve, like, do these things work? They do. What we're trying to differentiate is that a lot of them are being sold as accessible to everyone, but in reality sit on top of a foundation that the majority of athletes, particularly amateur and recreational athletes, haven't fully built yet. So a lot of these things live in the realm of marginal gains or things that people just misunderstanding about exercise physiology and training science. So that's sort of the content ecosystem that we'll be exploring today.
It's kind of like, what's the point of trying to train like a Norwegian if you're drinking 5 beers a night?
Correct. Yeah, sort of that. So I think that, the current content ecosystem that exists in endurance sports is very high opinion and fairly low information.
Right.
And that information gets flattened because, again, there might be a study that says a thing works, but I think that when it sort of gets refracted through the prism of podcasts and social media, some small intervention that quote unquote works, does it work for you? What is the actual use case? Do you have the foundation that supports this intervention? It's sort of like there's a lot of misunderstandings and misapplications of real science. So that is what we are talking about today.
So let's get right into it with the 5-zone model. And I mean, I feel like this is pretty controversial as something that's overhyped.
This is me being a troll right away.
Yeah, like I wouldn't have necessarily added this to this outline, but I really felt like your take here was interesting and would be helpful for athletes to hear. And so why don't you kind of fill us in?
Do you want me to make the case for why the 5-zone model?
I do.
Great.
And then maybe I might play devil's advocate
Perfect.
A little bit if I feel so inclined.
Well, ultimately, I guess, spoiler alert, I use the 5-zone model, but I think where people get misled and why it's overhyped to my assessment is because people don't understand what it is. Actually. So let's talk about what it actually is and how to truly implement it in your training in a way that is evidence-based. Because just saying science doesn't make something sciencey,
Right. Well, any tool or any proxy for certain training intensities, any system that you're bringing into the training is only as effective as you understand it and you're able to actually use it.
Yeah. So the zone model is a framework. It's a simplified map that's designed to help coaches and athletes communicate about training intensity so that we have a shared vocabulary. But those zones aren't real. They are proxies. They are a shorthand for underlying physiological processes that exist on a continuum. There are some kind of definite checkpoints along this continuum, such as lactate threshold,
LT1, LT2,
LT2, fat oxidation, lactate production, cardiovascular drift, ventilatory threshold. So what's important for people to understand is that your body doesn't have a switch at zone 2 that switches off at zone 3. these processes all necessarily bleed into each other because physiology is a spectrum, not a grid. Zone 2 was designed to describe the intensity where your aerobic system works steadily, fat oxidation is meaningful, and lactate stays low and stable, and your body's able to clear it, roughly below your first lactate threshold. That's the real concept. The number is just a label for it. So it's sort of like Zone 2 helps us approximate a series of processes and our relationship to them. It's not a real thing. Your body is not in Zone 2. So I think what people get wrong is they start to think of these things as definitive or literal rather than proxies. So Zone 2 is defined differently by so many different people out on the internet. Some use 60 to 70% of max HR. Some use lactate testing, some use ventilatory threshold, some use functional threshold. Your Garmin's Zone 2 and San Milan's Zone 2 and your friend's Zone 2 and your coach's Zone 2 might be 3 totally different intensity ranges. And there are multiple different ways to calculate zones in the 5-zone model, which again, I think is is a very useful and valuable tool that I like and use all day, every day. But again, there's multiple ways to calculate it, which doesn't mean that they're wrong. Again, these things are just proxies, so there's more than one way to skin a metaphorical cat. So the Zone 2 boom is traced back to this researcher, San Milan, who coaches elite cyclists and observed that they spend 70 to 80% of their training there. But here's what the leap misses is that a lot of those folks train these huge hours of week, so it sort of necessitates training at that intensity.
Right, that's a very good point. I think that a lot of people are going to skip right over that. Like if you're doing that much volume, in order to do that much volume, you probably have to be going at a certain level of intensity that allows you to maintain those training hours day after day, week after week, month after month.
So just to talk about some of the underlying physiology here, mitochondria are your cell's power plants that convert oxygen and fuel into ATP. More mitochondria means more aerobic capacity. The signal that builds them is metabolic stress, and that signal exists across a range of intensities, not just in one single discrete zone. Fat oxidation works the same way. Your body burns a mix of fat and carbohydrates at almost every intensity. That ratio shifts towards more carbohydrates when you go harder, but there's no clean flip from fat burning to not fat burning at a zone boundary. So your body's systems are not perfectionists. They do not check which zone you're in before deciding what adaptations to make. So I think what is overhyped here isn't actually the model, it's how people interpret that level of precision. The idea that if you're just a few heartbeats above Zone 2 and that negates the benefit, or that you didn't do the workout wrong, or that you even need a watch to confirm you're in the right range, I think the anxiety that this creates actively works against good and effective training. And this zone obsession can produce a lot of gray sort of middle area training where it's not easy enough for you to actually recover, but it's also not hard enough to meaningfully build fitness. And it can accidentally produce the exact training distribution that we don't want. So the underlying principle is, at the end of the day, 5-zone model or no 5-zone model, your easy running should be genuinely, authentically, truly easy. But the way to know if you're running easy enough isn't always a watch, isn't always that 5-zone model. It's that RPE that we come back to. Can you hold a full conversation and complete sentences without working for it? Great. You're doing it right. So again, the principle here is hard days hard, easy days easy. Zones are a useful teaching map, not a GPS. So again, the 5-zone model, very useful, I would say essential, but you have to understand what it actually is. The framework doesn't dictate how your body's processes work.
Do you think about things when you're training in terms of I'm in Zone 1 or I'm in Zone 2 or I'm doing this workout, it's, in Zone 5 or 3 or 4. Do you think about things in discrete zones like that when you train?
No, I don't. And I think that's because I spent fully the first 6 years of my training, with our coach, David Roche, where that was not the vocabulary we used. So thankfully, I think that he did a good job at developing my ability to run by feel. I don't use heart rate. I have a heart rate monitor. I don't look at my heart rate. I don't look at my pace. I just have like my elapsed time. Like I have a very simple watch and I train effectively, like I am doing all right here.
Yeah,
So
well,
I think that people get really bogged down in the data, and I like data. Data is essential to doing this well, but you have to understand what the data actually is.
I feel like that gap is it occurs. One, it's an educational gap. Folks don't really understand that data, or they know enough to really lean heavily on it. But they don't know, like they know enough to lean heavily on it, but they don't know enough to let that go.
Yeah.
And that, I think, does lead to a lot of over obsession around, how perfect was this run? Was it in the right zone exactly? Did I have the right amount of lactate in my blood during this threshold session? And the honest truth around this is before watches were invented, with GPS functionality, before we had training peaks and could look at exact splits in a workout, folks mailed training plans through the mail to each other from coach to athlete and wrote back every month.
Can you imagine doing that now? Like
that's what coaches did, and they charged, a lot of money to do that.
Gosh, the good old days.
Yeah. And like,
I love texting my besties, the athletes.
Sure. And some of that is absolutely nice. But the point I'm trying to make is this stuff worked just fine. People got better and they accomplished their goals without all of the bullshit that we bring into it. And likely everybody who's listening to this podcast in some way, shape, or form is over identifying with the data or these zones or something. You do it, I do it, every athlete does it. In some way, shape, or form.
Technically, if you've ever done the thing where you jog around a parking lot to get to exactly 6 miles, again, 6 miles is a proxy for the metabolic stress we're trying to put on your body. It's fake. Your body doesn't know what 6 miles is.
No idea.
So, like, we all do that because, like, that way of understanding our body's processes, that's not how the human brain works. Like, I need a number, I need a time, I need something specific and definitive because my body doesn't work in some hypothetical metabolic spectrum. Like, it's what we see here, and this is like the thing that gets me really excited as a coach, is how our physiology and our psychology don't always mesh.
Well, they don't mesh here because the over-identification with zone 2, was I at 70% of my max HR today?
My TSS was off by 1 point.
Right.
And it's like
that is insecurity.
Right.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
I'm insecure about my training. I don't feel it's enough. So I'm going to nitpick my training.
Or looking for false confidence somewhere, trying to like...
Exactly. I'm going to nitpick my training to prove to myself that it's enough. And I think it's over time that erodes your relationship with the training, and it makes it harder for you to enter that zone of genius where you're competently, like, unconsciously doing this work and feeling your way forward and trusting I'm at the right RPE and trusting that your training is going to be enough. Like, that's the space where you have real joy. You have a much higher likelihood of reaching your potential, and you have much more freedom in the process.
Yep.
It takes a long time to get there. You do sometimes have to hold on to these guardrails and these artificial things that we put around the training to help us understand our effort and where it is. But you also have to work towards getting to that place. If you're somebody who struggles to let go in certain areas around this, like, for example, was my threshold run perfect enough? Your
body doesn't care.
No.
Doesn't care.
Honestly, it does. And we've talked about this before. You get the same benefit if you're within 10% of your functional threshold as you are if you're at you nail the effort right on your 1 hour effort.
Because, like, the actual intention of a threshold workout is to improve your body's ability to shuttle lactate from your bloodstream. So if you overshoot it, you're going to build up lactate a little bit faster. If you do it way too fast and accidentally do a VO2 max effort, you're putting so much lactate in your bloodstream that your body can't reasonably clear it. So that isn't particularly helpful. If you way undershoot it, then you're not accumulating enough lactate for your body to meaningfully need to shuttle it.
But a 10% margin.
There's a huge margin
that's
for
a big
error.
margin.
Yeah, you don't have to nail it perfectly. Like if you're going kind of hard, you're always accumulating lactate and you're always clearing it to some extent, depending on, I mean, again, your body specific system. So your body isn't a perfectionist. Get some lactate in there, get most of it out is kind of what we're trying to do. And I feel like data is the thing I find fascinating about it. It's like a Zen koan, right? It's like the sound of one hand clapping, and it's useful exactly up and until the point that it's not useful.
Yeah.
And it all depends on how you use it, what it's based on. And, that's why we're not comfortable throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying, just let us mail you training plans from our, Zen monastery in Tibet. And that's why we are here getting our hands dirty with the data, working with people, assessing and reassessing what's useful, where it's not useful, where it's not productive, and how does this actually drive better decision making and improved understanding of the processes. And not all data does that.
All right. Let's talk about number 2 here, overhyped female specific training. Wow, we're really getting into the good stuff.
Into the Zoe intellectual erogenous zones.
So I'm going to talk about what people are hearing around this, and then definitely going to say that I feel a little uncomfortable saying female specific training is overhyped. Even though I have some female specific training certifications, I am not a female. So I feel like this is a great place for me to lean in and let you listen for a second. And then you can come in with the good stuff.
Let the man talk, sweetie.
Let the man come in and mansplain female training to a female athlete.
This is so funny because in our household, we call it Zoe-splaining because I feel like I embody, frankly, a lot of the things that men get shit for, unfortunately.
You're annoyed by a lot of the stuff that you do.
Correct. Yeah. I have a ton of unearned confidence. I interrupt constantly. I love to explain things to people that they almost certainly already know. And I love the works of Paul Thomas Anderson. You will not find a broier person than me.
This is a breakthrough in self-awareness, guys.
Thank you.
You're hearing it first here, as am I. All right. So what are people hearing, actually? So there's a growing message that women need a fundamentally different training approach. Female-specific programs, coaches, periodization schemes, etc. Some of the most viral things, or the things that the athletes that I work with or we see in our community over the years, are specifically around cycle syncing. Get this a lot. And then structuring your entire training week around the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle: high intensity in the follicular phase, back off in the luteal phase, rest during menstruation, and all of this stuff is so wildly popular on the internet. I know you added a statistic here, which is pretty wild to me, is 294 million views on the hashtag cycle syncing as of mid 2024. So this is a real trending, popular topic amongst influencers. But the honest truth is, on the day-to-day in the coaching process, actually don't see this stuff as that helpful. And there's not a ton of evidence to support that we should actually be doing these things. So maybe this is a good moment for you to take over. What are some of the actual known differences about sex? Because men aren't just bigger versions of women. Women aren't just smaller versions of men. So there are some differences that are important.
Yeah, I'm actually researching a book on this topic right now of pseudoscience directed at women, and why this huge gap in research around the female physiology opens up this opportunity for scammers, grifters, and social media to fill the gap that historically science and the medical establishment would have filled had they not been hell-bent on disenfranchising women. So what we actually know about sex differences in running is that the research does support real, meaningful physiological difference, like lower average VO2 max, different hormonal environment, differences in muscle fiber composition, connective tissue that responds differently to estrogen, higher rates of certain injuries like ACL tears and stress fractures. Part of that's physiological, some of it's cultural, and that women experience red S slightly differently and don't have testosterone as sort of this protective mechanism, and because of diet culture and the desire of our world
Yeah.
to be, again, hell-bent on controlling our bodies. A lot of women have sort of been cultured to exercise as a means of controlling their body and restrict their food. So women also do show some, we have a pretty unique physiology in some ways, and these differences are real. So we're not dismissing them. But what I want to emphasize here is the variation between individuals of the same sex is enormous. Sex is only one variable. It's not enough to build a training program around. So you mentioned this earlier, and many people are familiar with the dictum that women are not small men. This is true, yes, but it's also really over applied. So that original dictum did come from a real place because for decades, sports science research was conducted almost exclusively on male athletes, often young male college students. And the assumption was that those findings transferred cleanly and mapped directly onto female athletes, and they don't. Always. That's a legitimate critique. But somewhere between that research gap is real and women need a completely different paradigm. The pendulum swung way too hard. And so the joke I like to make, and one of the concepts I raise in my book, is that women are not blue hippos, right? So it's like when you say women are not small men, that is true, but then it almost implies that we need a totally different, radically new approach, which would love to see more science, but isn't true. So now we have this booming industry built on the idea that female athletes need female-specific shoes, female-specific gels, female-specific strength programs, female-specific periodization, when the evidence to that is thin to non-existent. I'm a huge fan of these female-specific coaching certifications. I think it's batshit that they're separate and that like postpartum training, breastfeed, like that just facts of the female physiology aren't an essential part of I guess. Like if it was up to me to get your driver's license, you would need to know how this shit works.
Sure.
Like you don't get to go to 7-Eleven when in Zoe's America unless you understand this stuff. But, I digress. But it again sort of makes it seem like women are either a drop-down category or that we're like a totally different category of being at all. So cycle syncing is one of the more specific versions of this, that you need to periodize your training intensity by menstrual cycles. This has been directly tested and doesn't hold up. A 2025 McMaster study used gold standard methods that found no distance in muscle protein synthesis between follicular and luteal phases. Another study in 2025 confirmed the research doesn't support cycle phase periodization for strength or endurance performance. The framework also assumes a textbook 28-day cycle, which I know that all of the people who menstruate that listen to this podcast are laughing because for many people that is not how it shakes out. So only 12% of athletes that menstruate truly have that 28-day like textbook picture perfect consistent cycle. And it doesn't apply at all for folks on hormonal contraception like myself. So again, the mechanism here isn't fake. Estrogen does influence connective tissue, nervous system function, and muscle tissue, but the effect size is getting dwarfed by so many other factors: training history, nutrition, consistency. And those are the things that really move the needle. So again, having training that's tailored for these kind of like female specific lifting, a lot of these things are much more marketing disguised as science than actual science. And what as coaches we do, and what I think the actual female specific coaching certifications emphasize, there's not like the secrets of the female physiology that you need to unpack. They just teach you to listen to and respond to the individual in front of you at the end of the day.
I mean, that's exactly right. What are you experiencing right now? How do you feel? And, what should we do that kind of meets you where you're at? One of the things that I see a lot in my coaching practice is that, one cycle is going to feel and be different than another cycle for an individual athlete. So at one time, an athlete might be experiencing certain symptoms during a certain phase of their cycle. And then, the next month, not at all. That consistency factor makes it really hard to have any kind of periodization that works around the cycle in practice. Like that application is really difficult because there's a lot of inconsistency there.
It's just not predictive of
Right,
performance. And if you tell athletes that it is, you run the risk of sort of falling into this trap of hormonal determinism, which is basically just a 21st century of like, hey, ladies, don't run too hard because your uterus might fall out. It risks training certain athletes to think they're too delicate or they can't handle certain volumes of training, certain approaches where, like, again, it's not like I'm
going
going
to... a little pathologizing.
It's pathologizing, but it looks like science. And I think that's the real danger here. But the things that are real and worth honoring is, it doesn't mean the menstrual cycle doesn't affect how you feel. It absolutely can. And for some athletes, pretty significantly. So if that is you, track your cycle. And like, I encourage my athletes who have a menstrual cycle to track it, and we talk about it and we try to suss out if there are patterns worth analyzing. Fatigue, motivation, sleep quality, mood, perceived effort, those can shift meaningfully across the cycle, and that's real data about your body. Experiences like postpartum training, those absolutely do require their own protocols, but that still has to be significantly more tailored to the individual than some mystical idea of what training should look like postpartum.
Right.
Again, way more research needed here. Similar for menopause, way more research is needed. But again, it's going to come down much more to the individual's experience of that life chapter rather than just saying, as a female athlete, here's what you will experience. And it's totally different than what men experience. Get to know the individual, get to know what they're experiencing. Do some damn science.
All right. That was great. Thank you, Zoe. Okay, let's go into number 3 here. Performance supplements. And the science here is real. But the hierarchy and how we prioritize this stuff is the big problem and why it's way overhyped. So what people are hearing, ketones, creatine, bicarb, etc., this list just keeps growing and growing and growing. And the marketing is awesome. It's sophisticated.
Whoever's
tactical.
Doing PR for ketones and bicarb,
I know.
Give that person a raise.
I feel like I'm a Navy SEAL when I, read through the marketing materials of these companies, and I'm gonna...
My weird kink is looking at the gender differences between how these things are sold to men and women. Because the lady advertising for ketones is so depressing because it's all like, hey girl, want to knock down your hunger? And then the man marketing for it is like, what's up, soldier? Crazy.
And the other issue here is that also there's a lot of great athletes and athletes / influencers who are out there talking about how the science supports them and how, we could be leaving performance on the table by not using these supplements. And, some of this does come from legitimate sports science communicators. We've talked about the pros of using stuff like creatine and bicarb and other supplements on this podcast before. There are very real benefits. But, some of the issues here also lie in the application, the price, and the individuality of the use.
Is that person making money off of convincing you that supplements are helpful?
Well, right. And
follow the money.
Right. And I think that's another point, too. It's, when you have somebody who has a lot of followers advocating to their followers that they use this product that they use, why are they advocating for that product?
Is it out of the goodness of their hearts?
I highly doubt it.
So some case studies here that I think are helpful. Again, spoiler alert, we're not going to tell you to throw away any of these supplements. My goal here is to have a more nuanced take about where these interventions work and where their application's more limited. So starting with creatine, which is one of the most well-researched exogenous supplements in existence, maybe right behind caffeine, which I would say is the gold standard of the shit works. So there's evidence for strength, power, lean muscle mass, explosive short duration performance is genuinely robust. There's good science there. For endurance runners, it's muddier, but there's some promise in terms of improving the ability to surge late in races or like have a finishing kick. But a systematic review and meta-analysis found creatine monohydrate supplementation was not effective for endurance performance overall in trained populations. So again, that's like trained amateur, like those are our people. It also causes initial water retention and body mass increase that not everyone likes. Some people like, to me, that's a feature, not a bug.
Right.
Like having more glycogen on board and carrying more water with you is good. And actually there is some research that shows because of that, there's limited but promising research that shows it can improve people's heat tolerance, but again, drink water, eat carbs. So there is some trade-offs there and some murkiness, but the best use here is supporting strength training and power adaptations and muscle maintenance, especially potentially in older athletes, but just randomly supplementing with creatine without getting extremely specific about what your intent is not the move.
I want to talk a little bit about sodium bicarb here because this has been a really hot product that's kind of making its way through the endurance space.
I wish I had my bicarb stock.
And really going
get our finance guy on that.
Honestly, it's gonna crash because
hot take from Mad Money over here.
Yeah, I want everybody to run this through every single one of these supplements through the 4 priorities of training.
Yeah.
There's no point in using sodium bicarb if you're not sleeping 8 hours a night, you're not already training consistently, and you don't already have the basic fueling principles and hydration principles dialed. There's no point in doing this if you don't have training periodization, polarization, including in strength training.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point in doing this if you don't have basic psychological skills. There's no point in doing this if you haven't, probably been racing for 10 years. All of this is like at the 1% or less gains. I don't even know why I bother to even advocate for why sodium bicarb is good.
Well, because there is research that shows that it improves performance in narrow settings.
I think therein lies the problem. Because our brains love the idea.
All I hear is like
gains,
performance improvements, and you don't conceptualize. Like a lot of it is like not a huge improvement, and also there's a big asterisk here with it, which is potential for GI issues, and that's a big needing backup shorts to me is a pretty big caveat.
Totally. I mean, it's good to educate people and say, okay, what are the mechanisms by why this works? Okay, buffers hydrogen ions and acidic byproducts of hard anaerobic training efforts. Great. That's really awesome. Mm-hmm. But that's for events lasting 30 seconds to 12 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think some of the stuff around ketones too is, interesting to study. We've talked about this a little bit on the podcast before. There's reviews. There's 12 studies involving 132 endurance runners that found no reported benefits of ketogenic diets or ketone supplements on aerobic performance compared to controls. And some even had worse performances. But we've talked about
that refers to ketogenic diets, not exogenous ketones.
But we have talked about some of the reported benefits that athletes have had from using ketones, more mental clarity. Maybe there's evidence that supports that this is helpful for preventing overtraining syndrome and things. But again, I think we're already pushing into that such a small percentage of gains that if we're really leaning on that, we better for sure know we've got the other 99% down.
Yeah, exactly. So the physiology here is that all of these supplements do target a pretty specific physiological bottleneck. Like creatine targets the ATP PCR system, bicarb targets acid buffering, ketones target fuel availability. Those bottlenecks only become limiters if everything upstream is already working perfectly.
Yeah.
Because you can't buffer your way out of an adequate aerobic base. You can't fuel hack your way past undertrained legs or insufficient fuel intake.
Right.
So these are all pretty marginal gains from a supplementation level. I mean, there are some use cases. If you are riding in the Tour de France, go for that marginal gain, girlfriend. But for the populations we're working with, these are not interventions that I think people need to be spending time, money, and energy focused on.
And
Because
to be fair, these are things that we don't focus on.
we don't. I mean, but again, like the framework here isn't my coach does this or doesn't do this, so I should do it.
Yeah.
The framework is let's look at the science, let's look at the caveats, and empower people to think critically. Use my code Zoe420 at checkout to get your own critical thinking framework.
How do I get my own critical thinking
skills? Take my 12-day class on how to follow the money and assess whether someone is trying to sell you some shit using code if you know at the link in my bio.
I can't wait for that commercial to pop up on my YouTube later today.
Yeah.
It definitely will.
It's just me teaching people how to like think critically and drop ship ketones on Amazon.
That's your masterclass?
It's my masterclass.
It's only $1,200
a
session.
It's only $1,200. It's so, I mean, honestly, if you do this, you will be saving. If you do my bullshit masterclass, which teaches you how to not buy supplements, you will save money in the long term. So
follow the money.
Again, what the overhype here, what it's about is the idea that supplementation is a meaningful lever for athletes who aren't maximizing the basics. That's the fundamental truth that we want to bring here is like, this is not the lever you want to pull on. So the implicit promise of supplements and how they're marketed by supplement companies, by influencers, by a lot of times science communicators, because it's what we do essentially every week is we release an hour of me yelling about how nothing works and you need to sleep for 8 hours. And there's a reason we're not the most popular podcast. So that's not like that doesn't win.
I think we should change our podcast name to the All Hacks Podcast.
Yeah, All Hacks.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it's like they come for the hacks and then they realize like, oh,
they accidentally get like a history about feminism and sports physiology. They're like, I hate this.
They're just waiting. They're just waiting for like hours for that hack and it just never comes.
This lady is so loud.
We'll share the hack on the next episode. We promise.
Next week, if you use my code Zoe420. But again, the hierarchy is like TJ said, it is consistent sleep, fuel the work, do the work, strength train the work. Supplements live in the everything else realm. If you're not pulling on those levers, I don't care what you buy from the feed. It just isn't going to matter. So, spending hundreds of dollars on supplements while not maximizing those basics is not the thing to do here. We're not denying the science. We're just trying to contextualize the science. And presenting science without context is actually bad science.
Speaking of which, topic number 4 here, the 90-gram plus high carb fuel protocol for endurance athletes. Overhyped. What people are hearing out there, elite runners, they're fueling 120 grams of carbs an hour, 150 grams of carbs an hour. The more carbs, the better. Morton, glucose fructose ratios, gut training protocols. And the message here is like, if you're not doing this, you're leaving performance on the table. I get these questions all the time. Athletes of all levels. Should I be fueling more? Especially for folks who are already doing 90 grams of carbs an hour, which is a lot. They're asking, should I do more? And athletes are also buying expensive gels. They're practicing elaborate fueling schedules. And they're stressing about hitting those numbers on every long run, which is, I think it's bringing the joy factor down in all of this, to be honest.
And this is where I feel like, again, context is important because, like, again, there is research showing that this can be beneficial in certain cases. And a lot of athletes do come to us not meeting the bare minimum fueling requirements.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to our 5 studies episode where there was a study done on marathoners at the Valencia Marathon that found that the majority of marathoners were getting like 60% of the carbohydrates they thought they were getting. People tend to overestimate amateur athletes tend to overestimate how well they're fueling. We advocate for that 60 to 90 grams of carb an hour ratio. If you have a smaller body frame, you might be on the lower end of that. If you have a larger body frame, you might be on the higher end of that, but it also is going to come a lot down to environmental factors, individual variability, how fast and hard you're running. And so you do need to experiment. I think it's good to have conversations just in general that shift so often the experience, particularly of someone socialized as a woman, is like, eat less. And so I'm generally enthusiastic about messaging that isn't eat less. But I think sometimes on the cultural level in the world of endurance sports, that enthusiasm becomes overly simplified, and just telling people to eat more without understanding why or contextualizing is also not the answer to the like bullshit diet culture hierarchy we're presented.
So, I want to just switch right into the kind of the plain English part of this. Think of your energy systems as a dial, not a switch. At low effort, fat is the primary fuel source. As intensity rises, you shift towards carbohydrates. You're always utilizing both.
Yeah.
You're going to utilize both, but at certain points, you utilize more than one or the other. The crossover point varies by individual fitness, but for most recreational athletes, it's around 65 to 70% of VO2 max. Elite 90-gram protocol is solving a problem that only exists for mostly elite athletes who are really pushing that crossover point, whose crossover point is very, very high. For a runner doing a 10 to 12 hour ultra, the bottleneck isn't really carb absorption capacity. It's many other things.
Yeah. So let's talk about what's overhyped and what we actually would like to see. So again, I think the flawed framework is so-and-so on the internet does this, therefore I should do this. So-and-so could be me, could be TJ. Don't do what we do unless you are me or TJ.
You're not
if
me?
you are me or TJ, why are you going back and listening to this podcast again in the future? You have work to do. Get back to it. I think it can also create this anxiety. I see this a lot with like, especially some of the female athletes I coach, that they've tried to push more fuel and they haven't felt good. And they interpret that as like a failure of like, I don't feel as good pushing enough. More. And it's like, no, you found your limits. The goal isn't to always do more. The goal is to find what works for you and to do that. If you've identified that doing more works for you, great. We found that. Do that. If you've identified that 65 grams of carbohydrates an hour works for you, your physiology and your goals, doing more isn't better. Doing less is certainly not better. Doing the right amount is what's better. So it causes athletes to overcomplicate things. It can cause GI distress. It can cause, people just taking in, and this is not the worst. The caveat, this is not the worst problem in the world.
Right.
Taking in a little extra fuel insofar that it doesn't cause GI issues isn't terrible, but it's also not what we want.
Right.
And again, the message here is identify your individual fueling strategy and practice that. Gut training is all about consistency and practicing taking in nutrition while running. So the bar shouldn't be reset at 90 grams an hour. The goal here is to figure out where your bar is and consistently clear it. So most athletes do need to fuel more, not less, but more isn't always better. So again, this lives in the world of nuance of like, a lot of this gets lost on the internet and it makes it seem like you must always be trying to do more. If you're not running at a higher, especially for amateur athletes, if you're running at like 40% of your threshold, you don't need to be taking in 100 grams of carb an hour. That's just going to hurt your tummy.
All right. So digest that, because
chew on that.
It's really important to understand. Last item, number 5, heat training protocols. And this is a great one because we are absolutely hearing it everywhere. The more people who do Western states with large followings on the internet, the more we hear about these ridiculous protocols to acclimate to the heat. It goes beyond hot tub and sauna into these active heat training routines and heat suits and heat training all year round.
I found a heated vest you can buy on the internet.
Heat training.
Doing research for this.
Heat training when you're injured. Heat training on a bike. Heat training inside of a sauna. Like, there are some ridiculous things out there.
I think again, this isn't something that we're like, this never works. That's not true.
That's not the point here.
Like, if you are running Western states, we will be doing heat training. Like, both of us did heat training for Western states. I will advocate for it for races, like for hot races and for athletes training in colder areas relative to where they're racing. But I think because so much attention goes to Western states and the particular athletes running it, it sort of makes it seem like the specific intervention is maximally applicable when that's not the case.
Well, let me give the people...
There can be downsides.
Let me give people the influencer pitch,
yes,
which is that if you heat train more, if you include heat training in your weekly training, every week over the course of the year, it's going to have an amplified cardiovascular adaptation effect. You're going to have more blood plasma faster. You're going to get VO2 max gains without having to do the extra mileage. And athletes attempt to do this year round because of those kind of the possibility of getting those gains. But that is very impractical. There are a lot of issues with that kind of approach. And what the science actually says here is the adaptations, yes, they're real. They're well documented. Blood plasma volume expansion is real. Improved sweat rate is real. Lower heat rate at a given effort is real. Reduced cardiovascular strain is real. And, better performance in hot conditions, it's real. That's not pseudoscience. That's not something that, where people are hyping up out there because they're trying to sell products. Like maybe they are.
Well,
trying
they
to sell
also
some
might
stuff
still be trying to
like
sell
that
products
heat suit.
too.
But this is actually based on real science. We've had science on this for a long time. Heat acclimatization works. The issue is that heat exposure adds a significant physiological stress and a significant psychological stress to the athlete.
Yeah. So there's trade-offs, right? There's a risk-benefit analysis, like any training stimulus, risk-benefit analysis. There might be points where the risk-benefit means, like, yes, you should be doing heat training. There might be times where I would file it more as a marginal gain and or a distraction or detriment to training.
Well, do we want heat training adaptation or do we want to improve our lactate threshold function?
Number one thing, like most important, this is not groundbreaking.
We want to improve our fitness?
The most important thing is to improve your fitness. That's what we're here to do. It doesn't matter like how much heat training you do if you're not maximally fit, right?
Right.
Like similarly, if you're extremely fit, but you have zero ability to perform in the heat, that's a great case for heat training. But heat exposure works by driving your core temperature up, which triggers this cascade of physiological impacts like plasma volume expands. You just get more blood. Great for vampires. Your sweat glands become more responsive. Your cardiovascular output improves at any given workload. The mechanism is real, but the thing that gets oversimplified is that heat is a stress. Your cardiovascular system doesn't know whether your heart rate is elevated because you're running or because you're overheating. It just sees the demand and rises to meet it. So when you train in a heat suit, your body treats it like a harder workout. Your perceived effort goes up, your RPE goes up, your heart rate goes up. You're asking your system to do more work at the same pace. So that's a double-edged sword. The adaptation signal is real because the stress is real, and stress is stress. But your body has a finite capacity to adapt to total load. Running stress, heat stress, life stress, sleep debt. Add a meaningful heat stressor on top of a training block that's already well loaded, well managed. You're not always layering adaptation on adaptation. You might just be accumulating more fatigue.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So here's how I would think about that breakdown of fitness versus heat protocols, just to simplify and put a bow on things, is a significant portion of the gains attributed to heat training and recreational athletes come not from the heat training specifically, but just the cardiovascular fitness gains of simply doing more structured training. Better fit athletes handle heat better. Plasma volume expands as a function of building aerobic conditioning alone. You don't need a sauna, you don't need a heat suit. A well-periodized 16-week buildup with consistent, easy aerobic work and proper fueling will expand plasma volume meaningfully, even without deliberate heat exposure. So more better training is more bang for your buck than heat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So an athlete who sleeps 8 hours consistently, has their nutrition dialed, has their periodization and polarization dialed, trains consistently, will be better prepared for a hot race than the athlete doing daily hot tub sessions while having shitty sleep, skipping breakfast, not eating enough, not doing strength training, not working on their mental skills. One of those things is the intervention and the other is a foundation. So it's sort of like putting a fancy gazebo on top of sand as opposed to a real foundation.
So again, I want to emphasize as we close this episode out our hierarchy of training priorities. Mm-hmm. The priorities start at the foundation. consistent training? Am I getting out 4, 5, and 6 days a week? Am I sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night? Do I understand fueling and hydration basics?
Honestly, if you have money to spend, the two things I would actually recommend: hire a coach, like obviously. 2, hire a registered dietitian, nutritionist, or a mental strength and performance coach / therapist. Work on your brain, work on your tummy.
These are all part of the middle of the pyramid. And if we don't have these things, if we're not really strong in those areas, introducing a 1% marginal gain is not going to help. It's like building a rooftop patio on a house made on stilts. The whole thing is going to collapse eventually. And you don't want that. You want an unshakable foundation. And that over time grows, and eventually maybe you're looking for those 1% gains. We love talking about this stuff.
I love that it's being talked about.
Yeah,
I love that
so key.
People are trying to engage with research. I'm just a science communicator in the wild, begging people to contextualize, add nuance, and to like read beyond the abstract before you tweet.
Yeah, absolutely. And man, I just can't emphasize enough the individuality of each person listening to this podcast, whether you're
are
a coach,
beautiful, gorgeous snowflake.
You're amazing. A coach, athlete, or both, like we are. What works for someone else may not work for you. It's cool to try and experiment with this stuff, but think about your resources, where you're putting your time and your money, and go for those bigger gains before you try to bite off that 1% silver bullet.
Yeah. If you have a topic that you want us to cover, write us, let us know. Send us those hot or nots. Don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, share, comment, question, feedback. Send us your haikus.
And all of it.
All of it.
microcosmcoaching@gmail.com. And check us out on the web, microcosm-coaching.com. And we'll see you next week.
Boom.